Vera Wild, who was so generous to come and talk about some nerdy shit today. and
It's literally all I ever do, so.
yeah, you're very good at it. And we have the second cartoon, Gayfesh.
The second cartoon ever made.
Yes, the ever made, ever. So I hope you're okay with sharing the screen with two cartoons.
I've had weirder evenings.
And for those who don't know, we're gonna be talking about Spider-Verse. Probably not the same kind of stuff that we have been seeing all over like YouTube and stuff, because like everyone's done it already. My idea for this was talking about like more in the realm of like analyzing characters in the universe specifically. Like for me, particularly Miles and Miguel, and how they are basically diametrically opposed to each other, right? But first, I would like to get, I guess, your general thoughts on the movie.
I'm going to say this now at the front end so that it's done and it's on the record. The movie was made with abusive crunch towards the animators. It was not made ethically. I have massive problems with that. I did not find that out until after I saw it. I am incredibly grateful that the sequel, Beyond the Spider-Verse, is delayed indefinitely. Officially, that's because of the strikes going on. But anything that will keep them from working their animators 77-hour weeks, including veterans who know what the normal workflow is, and said it was completely messed up the entire way through. So, that having been said,
Ditto.
For the sake of my conscience, I think the movie's fantastic. I think it's excellent. I think it's gorgeous. I think it, despite being over 2 hours, does not feel like it at all. I think the characters are engaging and wonderful, and the plot goes some really, really interesting places. And even on first viewing, I had a complete queer read on the film, not just Gwen, but the entire thing, pretty much front to back. And I'll try not to dwell on that reading since I devoted a video to it on my own channel, but like that's gonna be in the background no matter what, because I've never not seen it and not had that in my head, a queer reading of this thing.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with abuse part, like completely. Like I I was a very big proponent of like being like, we should probably have that be pushed back, even if like we want it really bad next year. Especially
I don't want it next year. I want it delay it by like 3 years, and I think we'll have a good product that
yeah,
wasn't
I
produced
want
by
it
Crunch.
when it's ready, rather than like right away.
Well, and like I kind of want to get away from this idea that good art has to be abusive, because like a lot of the famous auteurs that we've got, like Stanley Kubrick, were like incredibly abusive on set, particularly like you look at The Shining, how abusive he was to Shelley Duvall. And
it's not even a good movie, and I will die on that hill.
I haven't seen it myself. I just know that it's it is an example. Stanley Kubrick is kind of like one of those paragons of auteur filmmakers, and so yeah. But all of that aside, all of the background issues aside with it, I think it's really good. I think if I had one major issue with the film, it's that it ended on a cliffhanger, because those are always dicey. And I feel like I can't, in good conscience, give like a full-throated support of the film until I know how it's going to end up. Like I just, and I talked about this on my YouTube review of the movie, that like pretty much every time you end with a cliffhanger, it really depends on the follow through. Like I don't think if Return of the Jedi had been bad, that people would look fondly on Empire. And so I wouldn't have ended it on that cliffhanger. I am excited to see where it goes, because like as far as the cliffhanger setup is, I think that's a really cool idea. I just and especially when I reviewed it, like the actor strike hadn't started yet, so they hadn't delayed, and I knew the film was going to be delayed anyway, because I'm like, 7 months, I don't fucking think so. But yeah. Um,
Do you mind if I say one thing in defense of this particular cliffhanger?
yeah, sure, go ahead.
I'm not going to say that like cliffhangers are always good. They aren't. They are frequently crap. I will defend this one because it handles it in the way that I would want cliffhangers done if they're going to be done at all, which is that the immediate questions of that this movie is asking, particularly of its characters, are answered. The questions of what will Miles do? What will Gwen do? What will Peter B. Parker do? What will Miguel do? We have answers for all of them. They have made their decisions. Now, we do have to wait to see what the consequences of that are. But for me, the arc of what the core question of this movie is, given everything that they all learn and all find out or think they know, what will they do? And we have answers to all that by the end.
Yeah, no,
Now,
that's very fair.
I say that also as someone who is a much bigger fondness of open-ended endings in general than most people. Not that I'm saying this one is open-ended. It isn't. It is a cliffhanger. There is a difference. But like, I also just know as a person in general, I'm more amenable to things like that. So
Fair enough. For me, I think the most succinct, I guess, plot of the movie would be Gwen's journey throughout it. Because that actually does have a beginning and end. Like where we leave off on the cliffhanger, it is a cliffhanger in the movie, but that's very succinctly her endpoint for her character in that movie. I believe, anyways. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah, no, I would agree with that because like obviously I'm sure she'll have an arc in the next movie, but it's not like left in the air as to
what side
what's going to be resolved. Everything that all of her conflicts in that film were resolved in that film. Miles
Right.
is the one who still has things up in the air.
Okay, so I pretty much echo what you guys said. I love the movie. I don't know if I have nitpicks per se, but like there are questions that I have, but they can all very clearly be answered in the next movie when it comes out. But yeah. I loved it. So I guess we can just go right into the conversation at hand. I wanted to talk about, I guess, the relationship and the characters between Miles and Miguel. Like, some of the lore in it is like Miguel telling Miles that there's all this canon events that are happening throughout the multiverse. Spoilers, by the way. And they need to make sure that they happen, or else the multiverse will collapse. Miles, essentially, around the midpoint of the movie, does not accept that, like, on its face. I feel like the philosophies, I would say, of these characters are Miguel would say that you should sacrifice the few for the good of the many. And Miles was taught by Peter B. Parker very specifically that he should choose someone to save. And that someone for him, I believe, is his dad. And Miguel specifically telling him to let his dad go is very interesting for the movie. And what do you guys think about that?
Well, I think that Miguel has a very kind of like authoritarian, like maintain the structure for the sake of the structure view of everything. Like first off, let's get this out of the way. He doesn't actually know that canon events are like set in stone.
Yeah.
Like we don't know for certain that him going to that other universe is what caused the collapse of that universe. We don't know that Miles saving Captain Singh, was it? We don't know that that was what caused the big black hole to open up in was it Mumbattan? I'm trying to remember the name of the town.
Yeah,
But like
the metaphor for capitalism.
yes, the metaphor for capitalism, because that happened like right after the Spot had entered the super colliders, and it easily could have just been one of his big spots. We don't know. And the idea that it's like, oh, we have to maintain these canon events because that's what holds the Spider-Verse together, or he had like a different, more scientific sounding name for it. And I just that just sounds like a, well, we have to maintain this because this is how it is. But like, each universe is its own thing. The reason that these universes are connected in the way they are um might be because of their shared stories, but like that doesn't mean that severing the connections destroys the universes. It's like how the I guess in like Rick and Morty, the central finite curve, that's not the multiverse, that's just the part of the multiverse that has Ricks and Mortys in it. um and having a universe without them doesn't destroy the universe, it's just a completely different thing. And so it feels far more like Miguel cares about the connections between the universes more than making sure that the universes are okay in their own right.
I will say that when I saw what happened in Moonbutton, it
Yeah.
very clearly looked like it wasn't like glitched like the other like it happens in other parts of the movie. It looked specifically like it was from the spot because it was a dark hole in the ground with buildings sticking out of it. And like to me that didn't seem like that was Miles's fault. That was like very directly the spot. So, but yeah.
So this will be interesting because you've opted to go for the logistics angle. I'm going to go thematic, um, which also means I am going to reference my own queer reading on this, not necessarily because I'm trying to project it as an intentional queer parallel, but because I think it's just going to facilitate me explaining what I'm trying to say. Best just to put it in that realm again. Miguel, in how he views canon events, in how he views that this is how it happens, and how he espouses and has gotten the other spider people to take on board the idea of our existence requires sacrifice, and his very firm belief that the reason he lost so much that he did was because he tried to cheat the sacrifice. It rings a lot of similar bells to me as, not exclusively, but often, elder members of the queer community who seem to have hooked into this idea that to be whatever form of queer you may be is somehow intrinsically linked to suffering.
Oh
If you're
god,
not,
yes.
Yeah.
and if you're not suffering, you're not really queer. And Miguel looks down on Miles long before Miles makes his decision to try and save his dad. And I think part of that is because this kid didn't suffer. He doesn't belong here because he hasn't been through what we've been through.
Even though that's
And
objectively not true, like, Miles lost his uncle.
he did. But they still have these other canon events laid out for him. This is what is supposed to happen to you. This is what we went through. It's your turn now. And I find it very interesting that Miguel is so hooked into this idea that he's not noticing the small differences that I'm not trying to make a prediction as to how they may matter in the next movie, but, and I did double check this. The big one that leaped to my mind is Miles, in theory, is not supposed to be Spider-Man at all. Like, his very existence is anomalous. But Miguel is treating him as if he is doing what Miguel did. What Miguel did was make a choice. Miguel made a choice to take over a life that didn't belong to him. And he bore out the consequences of that, or at least what he believes to be the consequence of that. And for my purposes, I'm going to assume he's correct. But he bore out the consequences of that, and now he's projecting that need for consequences onto someone who didn't do anything, who just had something happen to him that wasn't supposed to happen. He's taking the consequences of his choice and saying everyone has to go through this, even if it's not a matter of choice for them.
So I have a question about that, and maybe you can
Go for
help
it.
me out. During the movie, I wouldn't say irrationally, but it did make me a little bit miffed that people were just accepting that Miles was specifically an anomaly in general. And I feel like I reject that he has to be an anomaly.
All right. So I'll go back to logistics on that. He is because the spider that bit him was not supposed to be in that universe.
Sure. But
So just definitionally, he is because the thing that even made him was not even supposed to be there. So I think it's less that he is an anomaly rather than he is like the offspring of an anomaly. So
He
like
is kind of the nexus of the anomaly.
would
there
you
we go.
say that his DNA changed when the spider bit him?
Well, it obviously did because the Go Home machine picked up on the DNA from Earth 42, and that's why he got sent to Earth 42. So yeah, his DNA changed.
So it kind of sounds to me like the universe kind of made it work, whether or not right.
Potentially, I think that's going to depend on the next film, since the assumption that I made based off that cliffhanger, and not everyone in my comments on my video agreed with me on this, but the assumption that I made was that the Miles from Earth 42 was supposed to get bitten by that spider and never did, and that's how he ended up where he did. But that is an assumption on my part. It's possible that no version of Miles was ever supposed to be Spider-Man.
It's possible that Peter Parker in Earth 42 was supposed to get bit by that spider.
Yeah, because Peter Parker was actually in front of him. Or that's what people were saying. I don't know for sure, but
yeah, I mean, there's a lot we still don't know, so that we have to kind of make a certain amount of assumptions.
yeah. I guess there were a lot of situations where like a friend of mine was like basically telling me that, hey, this is how this was intended, from like a bunch of TikToks like analyzing the movie and stuff. But like it frustrated me a lot because like I don't know. I guess we'll go back to the how I feel about Miles being anomalous. Like there's a bunch of things in this movie that I guess would be considered anomalous. Uh I guess specifically Peter B. Parker's kid. Cuz like that kid would not have happened without Miles. And I guess like it's a very existence centric kind of plot device, I guess, or theme. I don't mean to make this like a therapy session, but like it bothers me that certain people tell other people that they don't belong in a certain way, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like
I
go ahead.
I think that's supposed to bother you. That's supposed to sit wrong because Miguel is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like the logistical specifics of how he's wrong, we don't know yet. But like everything about the theming, he's wrong. He has to be.
All right.
Because
Also,
if he isn't wrong, then Miles is the villain.
well, and I would also like Miguel, I think, in terms of what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man, Miguel seems far more anomalous than the others. Like, it's pointed out that he's the only Spider-Man who's not funny.
That's
Like,
true.
every other Spider-Man has quips. Every other
So-
Spider-Man is cocky and jokey during fights or you know doing stuff like that. Miguel is just dead serious. Miguel just he's like, and his build is different. He's like a much bigger kind of a guy than everyone else. He's just like you look at him, and if you didn't see the spider logo on his chest, you'd be like, well, that's not a Spider-Man.
Well, so a couple of things. So as a fan of Miguel O'Hara, since
I know
his
he is. I
debut
know he's existed in the comics. Yes.
in the 90s, I like this is not about the costume, but like I reject the framing, and I mean the movie's framing as well, because people say he's not funny. Yes, he is. He's not jokey. He's not quippy, but he does have some flatly funny lines in the movie. He's just not delivering them any differently from anything else he says, which is fairly consistent with his comic book counterpart because he is one of the less jokey iterations. But no, he is still funny. He's not trying to be funny, is really the only difference. And
Gotcha.
like that does actually kind of matter to me a little bit as a fan of the character. But whether that was accidental on purpose, I actually kind of like the fact that he has some funny lines, but everyone perceives him as the not funny one, regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Since you are a fan of Miguel O'Hara, what do you think about his whole framing in the movie as someone who didn't actually have a lot of those canon events?
So Miguel is a really sort of interesting character and take on Spider-Man to take into account, because his journey towards with great power comes great responsibility as a concept was a slow burn, because Miguel at the start, he's kind of an asshole.
Mm.
And he's not just an asshole, he's a corporate asshole. Um so there's a lot that is very different about him. He lives in a world, he lives in basically a cyberpunk world where the corporations control everything. So that's the world he exists in. And he takes a lot longer to shake off the I need to find a way to turn everything to my advantage instincts that, say, your traditional Peter Parker learns within 3 days of realizing what his powers are. It takes Miguel a while. Arguably partly because of the world that he lives in, but also just as a person, he's more ingrained in that, and he doesn't have the same incredibly strong connections like Peter had with his aunt and his uncle, that you can press on those to really hammer home a message. He has some connections, but they're not to that degree. And so, while he is not devoid of a conscience, for a fair stretch, at least early on, when he is helping people, it's incidental because he is already there doing something else. Like, he doesn't like seeing people hurt. He doesn't think it's okay, but he also really deeply wants anybody other than him to do something about it so that he can just do his own thing.
Mm.
Well, he sounds like a 90s comic book character.
He is, but I actually think, given the setting that he is in, because unlike, say, a character who I can't stand, Cable, who was just dropped into the existing Marvel universe and treated like that was an okay thing, Miguel feels a lot more like a product of his environment than a lot of the characters Marvel tried to do that with.
I don't know. Like, what do you think of that specifically in the movie? Like, was it actually, you know,
So, what I would say is, in terms of what I've read of Miguel and in terms of how he can be, I won't say the movie was inaccurate. I would say it is leaning on one side of his sort of spectrum of personality.
right?
You know, from the more um sort of selfish, self-centered, and self-focused, and honestly quippier aspect to himself, to the more serious and actively trying to do the right thing, and as a result also grouchier end. This version of Miguel is farther to one side of the spectrum, but it is still within the spectrum of what I think feels authentic to Miguel. It's just pushing him to one side of sort of where he can land.
So we have talked a lot about Miguel. How do we feel about Miles' like situation in this movie? Um,
I know I've talked a lot, so I'll let somebody else go first.
Well,
Gayfesh, what do
yeah.
you think?
Sorry.
About Miles. Uh, yeah, I just rewatched it this morning, so I'm racking my brain trying to think here. Um, Give me a minute.
Sure. Um, so I guess to me, i- i- he's he's like a teenager, so he's like still trying to find his place in the world. And having people, I guess like a bunch of people yelling at him, telling him what he's supposed to be or what he is, rather than himself discovering that on his own. I think that's probably like mostly what character's about. Very relatable for teens and even some like adults who are in that situation. And I guess I kind of related to that myself. Um I was pretty much doing that throughout my 20s too. But yeah, Miles is pretty a pretty interesting character in this verse, especially like when you're looking at him as opposed to Miguel, who is like basically already knows his place. Even if it's like on shaky ground, he knows what he's supposed to be, and he kind of tries to put that on Miles at the same time. I kind of think that the whole movie was basically like pinning those two ideas at each other, two characters who were diametrically opposed to each other on like an ideals level. And I feel like I can kind of see where the next movie might be going, but like with a little bit of mystery still there. Um, but yeah, I. Anyways, I've been rambling.
Oh, that's okay. I
So
feel
one
like
thought that just occurred to me when Miles tells Miguel, I'm gonna do my own thing. Um
That moment, by the
looking
way.
It is a great moment, but looking at how Miles has been portrayed through the movie, a ton of the character beats of him just having to shuffle all of his different responsibilities. It's a very Spider-Man story.
Mhm.
Like you could, obviously the racial components are unique to him, but those aside, you could put Peter Parker in there and it would feel very, very much the same, juggling school uh, and crime fighting and chores and trying to work a job. Like it's all very much similar beats. We've seen them. Like honestly, Miles' whole introduction with his fight with the Spot while trying to get to the meeting, like it feels very much like the opening of Spider-Man 2, right? Um, so I'd be curious to see where they go with it in the next movie, because it doesn't feel quite like he is doing his own thing yet.
so. I think in Miles, in a lot of way, he spends a good chunk of the movie trying to figure out what his thing is,
That's true.
and for a stretch, thinking he's found it when he meets all the other spider people, thinking, "Oh, great, this is
True.
my thing. This is where I belong. This is what I should be doing." But initially getting the cold shoulder and not knowing why, lately finding out from Miguel why he's not just being brought into this. And this is another one of the things I put through a queer lens in my own video, which is that sense of like, oh, I found my people, but still feeling like you're not actually being accepted here, which as someone who is trans feminine, non-binary, and who for a long time identified as a cis male crossdresser, I have a long history of not quite being accepted by the people who I thought would be accepting
Yeah.
uh, of me. So I related to that a lot on that level. But in terms of when he's saying, I'm going to do my own thing, while it is delivered a little bit like a defiant, I know what I'm doing thing, I think I read it more as I'm I'm enacting my right to make my own damn mistakes in order to figure out what my thing is. Because Miguel's model is basically you're not allowed to screw up. Here are the mistakes you are making, and I'm not going to let you do them. And as a parent, I kind of get the general desire to be like, look, I already know what could go wrong for you, so I'm going to head you off at the pass. Whereas if you try and block somebody off from that, especially somebody Miles's age, and just say, no, you don't want to go down that path, if there isn't some way for them to figure that out for themselves that they don't want to go down that path, then you're not doing them any favors.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I hadn't really thought of it until you put it that way. I hadn't really thought of it as Miguel kind of like positioned in like a parental position over him. I mean, obviously he had a position of authority, but uh kind of like contrasting that with what his parents are wanting for him and what Miguel wants for him. And yeah,
The adults in his life, all in various shapes and forms, have pretty specific ideas of what they want his future to be. And I think he just wants the opportunity to actually like, look, can I figure this out for myself, including if I mess up? Please.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to get into speculation of the next movie, but
I mean, you certainly can. I'm really bad for speculation just
yeah.
because my brain doesn't work that way, and I'm just a kind of a I will have an opinion when I see it kind of person. Kind of
Yeah.
person. So
This is
by all means,
more
go for it. Though.
like particularly like specific to like a character moment. Um, I guess it feels like for like I guess at the end of the movie when Miles meets himself in Universe 42. Um, that Miles is basically the Prowler at that point. Um, and is working with his uncle. Do we think that that's kind of part of like Miles doing his own thing if he is still a good guy?
The part of that dynamic I found really interesting, and granted, I have not rewatched it lately, so if I'm misremembering, feel free to correct me on this. I got the impression that Aaron was kind of scared of Miles.
Really?
Hmm.
Yeah, like I just had a general impression that maybe Aaron led him down the path towards what he's doing, but Miles is going at it so hard. Aaron seemed a little unsettled to me. Maybe I'm projecting that. I don't know.
Well, I definitely think we're gonna get. I think a big part of the plot of Beyond the Spider Verse is going to be basically Miles' version of what if Uncle Ben had lived.
Hmm.
Um, because yeah, it's the universe where he doesn't become a superhero. Uh, I don't know exactly where they're gonna go with that. And I don't think that's going to be the ultimate conflict resolution in the movie. I think ultimately it's going to be Miles versus Miguel. I think Miguel is the ultimate villain of the trilogy. Um, but and the Spot, I guess.
I was gonna say I could see the emotional climax being Miguel, like whatever it takes to get Miguel to realize he's wrong. But I would say the logistical and action climax is gonna have to be the Spot.
Yeah, yeah. But I think the way that they had framed the Spot as like I created you and you created me, um, felt kind of hacked together. Like I thought that was probably one of the weaker parts of the film where they were just trying to like like he's like,
See,
"Oh, you threw a bagel at me." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, like sure that's what they were planning."
I love that.
I think it was
It's
silly. I don't like I don't
not
hate
because
it, but
it's not because it's silly. It's because on whose word do we have the "I made you, you made me"? It's the Spots. It's this aggrieved, ha- has a decent career white guy who has to make it somehow all about him and take what is frankly
true.
a B grade power and turn himself into the ultimate villain for somebody who never fricking noticed him before.
He doesn't want to be villain of the week.
He has to make it all about him, and that to me says everything about the Spot as a character.
Did you ever read that comic? Well, what was the guy's name? Was it Slide? He was like one of the D-list Spider-Man villains. He'd shown up in like one comic in like the 80s, and then like they did like a one-off in like the 2000s where he was going through a midlife crisis, and his midlife crisis was to like rebrand and give himself a dark origin story. And like he robs a bank, but not because he cares about the money. He robs a bank to get the attention of Spider-Man so that he can go toe-to-toe with Spider-Man. And like at the end, and like Spider-Man's just like, I don't get it. He just wanted people to think he was cool. And at the end, he's in the cop car going, "Yeah, all my friends are like cheating on their spouses or buying expensive sports cars, but I went toe to toe with Spider-Man."
I have not read that, but I love it.
It was a great issue.
I think I agree with Vera on the whole Spot thing because I think that was very deliberate because it is his own like headcanon about like what happened between the Spot and Spider-Man and it like the whole thing being from his perspective, I think that is very headcanon-y and very on brand for the spot because of his aggrievedness. Um, so like I think I would have to side with Vera for that one. Um, but yeah. Uh, so there is one thing that I wanted to touch on. I don't know how much longer we want to go, but um, for there I have like a theory about specifically Miguel's backstory in this movie and how it can be connected to something from Into the Spider-Verse. Because what I noticed, if you look visually at how they display the way that you glitch out when you're in a different universe.
Mm-hmm.
Miguel, when he is in the universe that he switches to, all of it glitches out, right? Like the whole thing, but he is left there um just like I guess in a void or something. I don't know what happens from there.
That's about how it looked.
Yeah. So, remember around the ending of the first movie where Kingpin was trying to bring multiple universes into his own universe so he could have his wife and kid back. I think he was trying to bring an entire universe into his and Miles's universe. And that's why the whole universe was glitching out. Except for Miguel.
Because he wasn't from that universe.
Right.
Hmm.
For me, that's what makes sense why that happened rather than Miguel being the one who made the whole thing glitch out.
Well, and that would also be interesting because if that's how Miguel did it, then he lied. He's lying about his origin story, and
He
it
might
might be
not
a
know.
thing.
That's
Yeah,
the thing.
I would say
He might not know that he brought an entire universe to him rather than the other way.
No, so like I think, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what Starpanda is saying is that the Kingpin was trying to pull a whole universe into the main one in the first movie.
Right.
And that the one that he was pulling through that just ended up glitching out was the one that Miguel was in.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, okay, that would be interesting.
Miguel assumed it was his fault.
But
either
that was just all Kingpin again.
It could be.
I mean, that's the only reason I have hesitance on that is sort of retroactively, unintentionally at least. So it's not like the thing that I really don't like, which is bringing back a villain and having going wahaha, it was me the whole time, and I'm like, just go away.
Well, they're not going to bring Kingpin back, I don't think. I'm just saying, like,
so.
a flashback, they realize it was Kingpin who did it.
I like it's a definitely a real interesting theory. It's one of those things where, let me put it this way. If the movie is as well thought out as it presents itself as, I'd say that's definitely an interesting read as to why Miguel's universe glitched out as opposed to went into a dark black void. However, given what I do know about the way it was made and specifically how much was changing very late in the game,
scenes were redone like 5 times. Yeah,
I can't quite bring myself to accept that the fact that, like, in terms of what is there, I'm absolutely agreeing with you, that fits. Mm-hmm. It's just that I know a little bit too much about the behind the scenes. That part of my brain is going, they might have just decided that glitching out was a cooler visual.
Maybe.
Yeah. No, I don't think they ended that first movie with a plan for what the next movie was going to be. Which is another reason why I am very hesitant about ending things on cliffhangers. I'm a big Star Trek fan, and while I think Best of Both Worlds was a great two-parter, the second part was not as strong as the first part because they were very obviously written at different times, and it was a tradition that TNG kind of continued through the rest of the show, where they would have a cliffhanger ending and they're like, okay, see you guys in 3 months, we'll go and break the part 2. I'm like, no, don't write a cliffhanger if you don't know how you're resolving it.
I mean, like, the fact that that's often how it goes down, whether on purpose or not, is part of why I don't like cliffhangers. Like, I'm trying to think of the way that I put this before. Here's sort of like the cliffhanger adjacent thing that I do like usually. I I don't like the cliffhanger that literally just feels like, "Oh, our hero is hanging off a cliff. How are they going to get out of that?" It's like, I don't know how, but I know they're going to, because you're not going to open the next one with the hero dying. So, okay. What I do like is the hero hanging off the cliff pulls themselves up onto the edge of the cliff, then looks out and sees whatever the hell the next thing they have to face is, and it's like, oh crap. That I can take. If that analogy makes any sense.
Yeah, I got you.
So, in my defense, I think it would, like my little theory, would explain why Miguel is so butthurt specifically about Miles. Because if he knows that his universe went to that universe, then
let's see. I think it plays better if Miguel doesn't know, and Miguel has just been taking the one massive assumption that he made that it was his fault and just projecting it onto everybody.
Yeah. But
if he actually knows that it was Miles's universe that pulled it through, that switches up motivations from being very sincere in his intents but wrong to being sinister. Might be too strong a word, but like being ill-intended. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I know what you mean.
Yeah, I don't think Miguel is going to have a come to Jesus moment. I don't think that's the kind of character that he's written to be. So I don't think he's going to be shown wrong and then do the right thing and be like, "You're right, you're right, Miles. I was wrong. I had this all wrong." I don't think that's what's going to happen.
Well, my thinking of it was more like, since it came from his universe and Miles was the only one that he knew that was different, all of that resentment would go to Miles. But yeah, I get what you guys are saying.
Yeah, okay. I kind of get, like, not even deliberate, but just like this residual, you're connected to something that hurt me. Yeah. And I can't let that go.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Like at the end of Civil War, I don't care. He killed my mom.
Yeah. Which was kind of a dumb line, but
I liked that line. I thought it was. I thought that was very emotionally true for Tony. I thought that worked for him.
I guess, yeah. You know what? I was wrong. That's not a dumb line. My brain went to
Your brain went to Martha, didn't it?
Yes, it did. So never mind. Forget what I said.
Fair. I can understand. They came out around the same time, so I can understand mixing those up.
They came out around the same time, and if you break it down by bullet points, have essentially the same plot. Like, there's a difference in terms of the history and the nature of the connections between the two characters, but two people who should be on the same side find themselves at odds because of a fundamental philosophical difference in approaches, stoked on by a villain in the background who is not confronting them directly, but seeks to just enhance the divisions that are already there and put them at each other's throats, and ultimately, regardless of what reasons they have to work together, their emotions make them clash.
Except the difference is that in Civil War, the villain won.
Yeah, well, also the difference is Civil War was good movie.
It was better written, yes.
Yeah.
I have found it interesting, and maybe they've just stopped paying attention to me, but it does seem like since getting their Justice League movie, the Snyder Bros don't defend BVS as vehemently as they used to.
Yeah.
I feel like once I saw the ultimate cut of BVS, I was just like, okay, I can let go all of the plot holes that I took issue with because they were literally just cut for time. But I still think Snyder fundamentally does not understand Superman. And
that's the reason I never actually saw the ultimate cut, is because I heard what people said about it and like, oh, it fixes this and this, and like that's all the logistical stuff.
It's logistics. It's not thematic fixing.
Yeah. My problems with that movie are thematic and philosophical. You can plug all the plot holes you want. I still am not going to like it.
I think Zack Snyder thinks that comic books are the big splash action pages because he's really good at directing action scenes that look like they're the big splash action pages from comics, right? Like when he directed Watchmen, like all of those fight scenes, he was like doing the flashy stuff. And I remember seeing this
Which was
watching the movie, going,
wrong.
"That's wrong. That's not what Watchmen's about. You totally like misunderstood the like." The way that he played Rorschach is cool, and it's like, no, Alan Moore said that if people came up to him admiring Rorschach, he's like, please get the fuck away from me.
Like I will hold on to the idea, and I actually do like this movie. I hesitate to defend it, but I do actually like it. I will argue that Snyder's masterpiece is 300 because it was a perfect match of director to material.
Well, yeah, Frank
Because
Miller's a fascist, and Zack Snyder has a fascist aesthetic, so that works pretty well.
I mean, not even just that, but 300 is nothing but splash pages.
Sure.
The entire comic is that exact thing that Snyder's really good at emulating. And like I disagree with it philosophically across the board. I still like that movie. I enjoy watching that movie.
It was fun. I saw it in the theater and I was
Like,
yelling Sparta afterward.
There's so much that is so wrong with it, and I won't defend it, but I do enjoy it.
Yeah, it's trash cinema. It's fine. If you just want to watch it for for Michael Fassbender shirtless, go for it.
Yeah, like don't take it as a life guide at all, but I enjoy it. Whatever.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to touch on, unless you guys wanted to give out a conversation type of thing for Spider-Verse.
No, I feel pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like I mean, I did my YouTube video on it, and we talked for about an hour here, so I think we pretty much covered it.
All right. Well, I appreciate both of you for coming along for this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go ahead and shout yourself out for both of you. Council of Geeks, right?
Yeah, so for my geeky based stuff, you can find Council of Geeks. Patreon pays the bills, but feel free to check out what my stuff actually is that the Patreon funds before you give me money. So Council of Geeks on YouTube is the main thing. Video essay and or list style material every Saturday. Also Break Room of Geeks, which is where, were the strike not ongoing, that's where review content would go. I'm figuring what else to put up there at present. I'll probably be talking about video games a lot because that stuff's not being struck against. But there's that as well. And then I'm on Twitter. I will not call it X. And Instagram and Facebook, I guess, under Council of Geeks. If you are interested in my perspective on being gender fluid and or the spicier side of my life, and I am going to underline that word at least 3 times, you can look for Vera Wild, wild spelled WYLDE, on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, and also some other spots that you can find me. But you know, look around; you'll find them if that's what you want.
And Gayfesh.
Yeah, I am Gayfesh pretty much everywhere. Gayfesh.com has redirects to all my links, so you can find everything there. But I do video game and media review streams on YouTube. Gayfesh there, and yeah, that's me. I'm a fish. I'm a cartoon fish.
And a well-spoken one.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I am Starpanda, and you can find me anywhere at Starpanda TV. Thank you, both of you, for the conversation. So, yeah, you guys take care.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.